Hello YouTube! The Giant is a fan favorite of Skyrim's creatures, hitting you with a club and shooting you up in the sky, and what's definitely a feature and not a bug. But did you know that Skyrim's Giants have distant blue-skinned cousins who sail across the northern seas of Tamriel? These so-called Sea Giants are popular creatures of Nordic legend, and today we're taking a look at the lore behind them. So, the Sea Giant, a presumed distant cousin of Skyrim's regular giant, is a curious case. For one, they are much more intelligent than Skyrim's regular giants, as they are able to master multiple languages next to their own and are far more advanced craftsmen. While giants in Skyrim are quite primitive, the Sea Giants are able to build long ships and create advanced tools, and they are even able to use a limited degree of magic. Further differences with their land cousins on Skyrim's tundras are that they have blue silvery skin and are even more resistant to the cold than regular giants, and unlike normal giants, sea giants are mostly creatures of legends, as not many have actually seen them during their lifetime. You see, sea giants, as their name suggests, live on longboats in the Sea of Ghosts for most of the year, and they very rarely make landfall on Tamriel. Only once every few years, small contingents of sea giants will make land on Tamriel, and it's even rarer for large groups to make landfall. When they do make landfall, it's often during very cold winters that even they cannot weather, and they often raid Nordic coastal villages if they come en masse, which they have done a few times. And if they come with really big groups, they often raid bigger cities on the northern coasts like Solitude, Dawnstar and Winterhold. Although that happens so rarely that most Nords don't even tend to believe in the sea giants' existence, and see them as creatures of legends and fairy tales which do not actually exist and are just, present in stories to scare children. But they very much do exist, as like I said, they have raided Skyrim's northern coast semi-regularly during its history, and in the lore that we have it says that the legends of sea giants on Tamriel's northern coasts started around the middle of the First Era, which actually provides somewhat of a hint of where they could live, but I'll get to that in a bit, because you see, the sources that we have, which are all written by Tamrielic peoples by the way, tell us that sea giants live on their gigantic longboats all year around and do not make landfall unless it's so cold that even they cannot go on sailing and the sea freezes around them. The people of Tamriel presume that the sea giants on their ships, which they allegedly live on all year round, feed themselves by hunting the whales of the Northern Sea, and the extreme cold of the Northern Sea of Ghosts doesn't bother them that much because of their extreme cold resistance, meaning that as long as they keep themselves fed with whale meat and presumably are able to drink salt water, I guess, they can keep themselves going indefinitely at sea. But I personally have a different theory based on some evidence, because considering that we know that the continent of Atmora, which froze over and became completely unlivable for regular humans despite being the original home continent of most races of humans, that continent is in the north of the Sea of Ghosts, and that continent also allegedly had giants. And the story of sea giants started appearing for the first time in the middle of the First Era, when Atmora had semi-just frozen. There's a strong chance that their main population, so the main population of sea giants, lives on Atmora's coasts, being able to weather the cold due to their extreme cold resistance and being able to live off the fish that they catch near the coasts. This also means that they could get non-salt water by melting Atmora's land snow and ice, solving that problem. Another strong indicator of them living in a place which at least used to be inhabited by humans is that in their raiding parties they bring a lot, and I mean a lot, of half-giants, which allegedly came about due to their breeding with humans. Considering how rare sightings of sea giants are on northern Skyrim, and thus not many Nords who have even seen them, and even less who would be able to breed with them, and even less who would have wanted that, it would make sense that these half-giants, which seem to have inherited the cold resistance of the actual sea giants, are probably the long-time descendants of those humans who on Atmora breeded with these giants, leading to the half-sea giants long before Atmora froze over. Or perhaps just as Atmora was freezing over, just, to give their own descendants a chance. But again, it all makes sense to me, but that's my speculation, since the only actual lore that we have is that they live all year round on their longboats, but that doesn't really make much sense to me personally, if only because of the salt water thing. So yeah, it's likely that they may live on Atmora, or at least what's left of Atmora, and likely then on Atmora's coast, considering that they mostly feed themselves with whales, and nothing grows anymore on frozen Atmora. That being said, due to their seafaring nature, they do spend a lot of time at sea and on the coasts. This can also be seen in their tools and in their clothes, as much of it is made with whalebone, horker hides, whale skin, and the large scales of a weird and unidentified sea creature that they seem to catch, although nobody on Tamriel seems to know what kind of creature those scales are on. But to get an idea, maybe watch my video on Tamriel's sea monsters for an idea of what kind of creature that possibly could be. But more importantly, their tools, being mostly made out of materials gathered while hunting out at sea, shows that they have very little land resources to work with. In fact, when they raid Skyrim's most northern villages, they seem to rarely take any valuables. They mostly take wood, metal and other building materials that are probably really hard to come by wherever they live when they are off their ships, be it just the high seas on their ships all the time or at Mora like I speculated. Because they need these materials to maintain their longboats, as repairing your boat with whalebone might not be the best material to keep them floating. Now, considering that they also attack Nordic ships when they encounter them on the Sea of Ghosts, because Nordic sailors say that if you are a witness to seeing a sea giant, you won't survive to tell the tale, it's likely that they also repurpose the materials of enemy ships that they, destroy to repair their own ships, trying to be as creative as they can with the little materials that they have. Strangely enough, it's even said that their weapons, especially harpoons, which are made out of whalebone, are of quite high quality, and that according to some on Tamriel, they are of better quality and they are lighter than some metal weapons on Tamriel, which is a pretty cool lore tidbit. Now it also seems that they are organized relatively primitively. They have chiefs, so they mostly likely live in really small communities like the orcs, although they also have titles like captain when on the high sea, so they might be more organized. We don't really know anything about the organization of their culture other than that the half-giants do seem to be always subservient to the actual sea giants, as they are usually seen serving the sea giants rather than a sea giant serving a half-giant. So that's basically what we know about their culture. That being said, earlier in the video I spoke about their language, which I couldn't find much of in the lore resources in the game, but the UESP have actually compiled all the voice lines in their native language that we have, and they try to make sense of what their language is like. They discovered that their language shares some words with the language of regular giants, but is quite different overall, which actually makes sense considering how many generations these two distant cousin species have spent apart, if of course they are from Atmora. Now, we also know that during our playtime in the Elder Scrolls Online there are a few places where we can encounter them, suggesting that the year 582 of the Second Era, when Elder Scrolls Online takes place, is a pretty cold year. As expected, we can find them raiding some villages along the very northern coast. We don't really know whether or not the sea giants became extinct by later eras, because in the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim we don't see them anywhere, but considering that in the lore they only make landfall on Tamriel once in a few decades, it's pretty likely that they are still around, but they just aren't there that year and it's not a particularly cold year. That being said, that's basically all I can tell you about the sea giants, and I really hope that I managed to teach you something new about the Elder Scrolls lore today. And if I succeeded, consider leaving a like and maybe subscribing, or just returning for the next Elder Scrolls lore video next week. I make them every week, or I try at least. Anyway, all that rests for me to do is to vocally thank my top Patreon supporters, Mr. Bernardo Binda, Gabriel Binda, Polarized Putin, Athena Hayodis, Volkjor of Argonia, King Chris, Bolds, Scrap of the Scrolls, Doji, Fenrir, Sword of Bushido, Rakai and Mr. Christmas. It's thanks to these people and all the others on screen that this channel stays alive, and for that I'm very grateful. That said, I hope to see you all in the next Elder Scrolls lore video. Bye bye.